right. Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of the 6th of November, 2017. Let us all rise for a pledge of allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we begin the formal portion of our meeting, I'd like to recognize Mayor Beitler with the Award of Excellence.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you to the council for allowing us to present to you once again the Mayor's Award of Excellence. This time for the month of October, it's being presented to Rachel, I think her friends call her Shelley Hinsey, who works in the purchasing division of the finance department. She was nominated in the category of loss prevention by purchasing agent Bob Walla for her work with the city and Lancaster County and the Public Building Commission on billing variations for city cell phones and data services. As a buyer, Shelley purchases items and services that cost less than $25,000. She also manages most of the surplus property process for the city of Lincoln and the county. In 2016, purchasing became aware of billing variations for cell phones and data services from the contracted vendor Horizon. Shelley was asked to look into the issues and report her findings. In her initial review, she discovered a number of areas where the city and the county could save money if they minimized the number of plans available, and she went forward to recommend specific plans based on usage and the type of equipment used. Over 6 months, she worked with Verizon and all the agencies to determine what plans were associated with each of the various accounts, reviewed hundreds of pages of reports and department correspondence to determine which accounts were in use and why the amounts on the bills were so different. Meetings with Verizon helped develop a list of plans that were efficient and effective. The first month of service with all devices on the limited plans was the February billing cycle, and Shelley went through all the invoices, worked with Verizon to resolve problems resultant of the changes. She continues to work with agencies and Verizon to ensure that plans are still fitting the employee's specific needs. Shelley's work resulted in tens of thousands of dollars of savings to the city, county, and Public Building Commission. It also raised awareness by agencies of monthly billing rates that could prevent future issues. Walla wrote, Shelley continued her work as a buyer while conducting the audit of the Verizon accounts. Her dedication to her buyer position and her desire to save taxpayer money while improving customer service is why this request for the Mayor's Award of Excellence is being requested. So it's my pleasure to present Shelley with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for October. Thank you.
Afternoon, Council. Shelley just really took this on her own ambition. She has a lot of other work to do, and when I asked her about this, she said that she would take it on. It did take literally at least 6 months to go through all of these. There are about 1,800 devices that she was looking at. So just a lot of detail that went into it, and she's an extremely hard worker and very deserving of this award, and really appreciate it.
Very good.
I think our finance director, Brandon Coughlin, would like to say a word or two also in this case.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Shelley, for your service. And so in the 10 months I've been here now, that's 3 of my staff that have been recognized with the Mayor's. I have the highest percent of any department right now. I'm really blessed to have a great staff, and I think they all have intentions on being very good stewards of public dollars. And as doing that, I think this is a great example of stewardship with the prevent of loss for the city and the county, since they serve both. So being entrusted with those resources is really important, and I appreciate Shelley's hard work, her dedication, and the initiative to make these changes to help benefit not only the city but also the county as we move forward. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Would you like to say something, Shelley?
And I just want to thank everybody that I work with and my boss for this recognition, and it's been a pleasure working for purchasing, and I enjoy it.
Okay, is there anybody, you have any family here you'd like to introduce?
My husband, Scott.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And you folks, yeah, you don't have to wait around, because it could go on for a while. All right. So today we are beginning with the Board of Equalization meeting, and our first order of business is to elect a chair. So I'll open up the floor for nominations.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Roy Christensen to be chair.
Second?
Nominated by John, seconded by Jane. Any other nominations? Okay, we'll vote on that nomination.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Each year, the Lincoln City Council passes a number of improvement district ordinances. Today, we're here to equalize the assessment for several such districts: downtown core management, downtown maintenance, the downtown management, and the West Haymarket downtown maintenance business improvement districts. These districts encompass the management activities performed through and contracted by the Downtown Lincoln Association. Once these projects have been completed, the cost is paid by the city through its special assessment revolving fund. It is then necessary for the city to recoup its costs from the benefited property owners and reimburse its revolving fund. These costs or assessments are computed by the Urban Development Department and presented to the City Council for its review when sitting as the Board of Equalization, as we are now. The clerk will read the description of each district into the record. Then a representative from the Urban Development Department will come forward and make a brief statement about the districts. After that, anyone wishing to make a statement may come forward. Please state your name, address before making comments.
All right, our items are the Downtown Core Management Business Improvement District, generally bounded by N Street on the south and Pinnacle Arena Drive on the west, thence north and northeasterly along Pinnacle Arena Drive to 8th Street, thence south along 8th Street to S Street, thence east along S Street to 9th Street, south along 9th Street to Q Street, east along Q Street to 10th Street, north along 10th Street to a point approximately mid-block between Q Street and R Street, east along said mid-block point to 14th Street, south along 14th Street to Q Street, east along Q Street to Centennial Mall, south along Centennial Mall to M Street, west along M Street to 13th Street, south along 13th Street to L Street, west along L Street to 12th Street, north along 12th Street to M Street, west along M Street to 9th Street, north along 9th Street to N Street, and west along N Street to Pinnacle Arena Drive. Then we also have the downtown maintenance, which is extending from 7th Street on the west to 17th Street on the east, and from R Street on the north to M Street on the south, including the properties abutting on the west side of 7th Street from N Street to R Street, the east side of 17th Street from Q to M, the north side of R Street from 7th to 10th, the south side of M Street from 8th to 17th, both sides of 13th Street from M Street to Lincoln Mall, and all of Cornhusker Square. Downtown Management Business Improvement District is generally bounded by N Street on the south and Pinnacle Arena Drive on the west, north and northeasterly along Pinnacle Arena Drive to 9th Street, southeasterly along 9th Street and I-180 to a point approximately mid-block between R Street and Q Street, east along said midpoint to 14th Street, south along 14th Street to Q Street, east along Q Street to 17th, south along 17th to K Street, west along K Street to 14th, south along 14th to a point approximately mid-block between Lincoln Mall and H Street, west along said mid-block point to 10th Street, south along 10th Street to K Street, west along K Street to 8th Street, north along 8th Street to N Street, and west along N Street to Pinnacle Arena Drive. And finally, the West Haymarket Downtown Maintenance District, generally located along the west line of Outlot C, West Haymarket Edition, from approximately K Street on the south, north to N Street, and continuing north along the center line of Pinnacle Arena Drive to approximately 9th and 10th Streets, then south to R Street, west to 7th Street, south to O Street, east to 8th, south to the alley south of N Street, and west to the east line of Outlot C, West Haymarket Edition.
Yeah, I noticed you left all the fences in
Yes.
here. That's quite, okay. Legal words.
Good afternoon, I'm Ron Kane with the Urban Development Department, and I prepared the proposed assessments before you today, and they're all based on expenditures approved for payment between September 1 of 2016 and August 31 of 2017. And I'm here today to try and answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions? Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to testify on any of these items? Seeing none, we'll enter into the voting session.
All right, does someone wish to move approval of all the districts?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Lyrian. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn, sine die.
Second?
Adjournment moved by John, seconded by Jane. Please call the roll.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
All right, we're now going to move into the regular city council meeting. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business for the city council is as follows. The clerk will call the item listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you're speaking in favor or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the City Council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor planned for a future agenda. Will the clerk please read the first item of business?
Yes, and just a reminder, due to Veterans Day and Thanksgiving holiday, the City Council will not meet on Monday, November 13th or Monday, November 27th. We do request those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Our first item is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 12.
Would anyone like to speak on any of these items? Do we have Amber Brannigan here? Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Amber Brannigan. I am the Administrator for State Building Division, and I am here to take the opportunity to be part of the Urban Design Committee. I have been with the state roughly almost a year now, and prior to that I was at the university for 7. As we have worked through our 20-year master plan and the development of the Capitol Campus Arena, we've had the opportunity to work very closely with the design committee as we work to make choices in partnership with the city. I think being a part of this committee will allow us to continue that relationship, particularly as the city begins to work on their 20-year master plan and to ensure that we're working in cohesion and transparency as we move forward together.
Okay, got questions for Amber? Thank you very much for your willingness to
Yeah.
serve.
All right, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this item or any other items on the consent agenda? Next item, please.
Vote on these items. Items 1 and 2 were introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved. Second?
Moved by Larry and seconded by Jane. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Then items 3 and 6 through 10 were introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jane, seconded by Carl. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. Item 13 is the application of Mad Mike's Bar and Grill for a Class I liquor license at 230 North 12th Street.
Anyone here to speak on this item? Okay, next item, please.
All right, next are items 14 and 15, application of Buck and Gas General Store for a Class D liquor license at 2801 Northwest 48th Street, Suite 100, as well as the related manager application of Fu Win.
Yes, good afternoon, Council.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
My name is Fu Nguyen, and I represent for Vietling Investment Group LLC, and we want to apply for the liquor license at for Buck and Gas Station at 2801 Northwest 48.
Okay. Can you tell us about your application? Anything particular going on there?
Yes, the application we just have I don't know if you have the new version for the building that we just draw the wall, and we have the two entries for the building, and one for dollar store and food court, another one for just for beer and wine for liquor, and we have the separate wall and the wall for liquor, the wall for beer store to the residential house. It more than 100 feet, and another one that when the client come in to buy, when the customer come in to buy the beer, they cannot go around the building. So that is two things that we are thinking that we don't have customer just have the beer on their hand and go around the building, and the distance between the beer to the residential house is more than 100 feet, and that's all I have, and I can answer any question that you have for me.
Other questions? Carl?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. What was in this space previously?
I'm sorry again.
Do you know what business was located in this space before you took it over?
I know that they have the gas station before, and then they are our country. So that for empty for around 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We have some staff questions. Can invite Officer Schaefer, Investigator Schaefer up, and there's another city staff member that wants to give us some information. You can have a seat, and we'll call you back if we need to, sir.
Yeah, while they're coming up, I'd just like to make sure the city clerk knows Mr. Nguyen's name is NG, not NQ, as it's listed on the meeting notice.
Thank you. I
so
will get that corrected.
I think it was all right in the application, but just to make sure.
It's not on the.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Investigator Conan Schaefer, Lincoln Place.
Brian Will, Planning Department.
Okay.
I guess from the time this application was made and reviewed, did the applicant come up with special modifications to the building to be in compliance to qualify for a liquor license at this point?
Not that I was notified of. It's possible that they did. The normal process would be if they did have any changes to the original application, amendments, modifications, those would get turned into the Liquor Commission, and then that would in turn get filtered back down through the city, and I did not receive any of that.
So I guess what modifications would the applicant need to make in order to qualify for a liquor license, and I guess the modifications that would allow him to be within that 100 feet from a residential property line?
I'd have to defer to Brian for that one.
Yeah, so part of this we're talking about needing a special permit under the zoning ordinance, and currently the way the building's configured, it's not possible to meet that separation. There is a condition under which they potentially could, and that is separating out a portion of this building as its own walled off, separate entrance, separate point of sale. So there's a potential to get there. However, that plan hasn't been submitted yet. That special permit has not been approved yet. So I think a portion of the, at least in part, that the basis for the recommendation to denial is because of that fact.
So you are recommending denial. Okay. Other questions? Would you both be able to speak with Mr. Nguyen and help guide him in the right direction?
Actually, I've met with both the applicant and meeting in the planning department, spoke with his architect. I think we can get there. I think they can get where they need to be if they choose to. So, yeah, we'll be happy to meet with them again.
Okay, so what's their next step?
Get a special permit submitted to the planning department that meets the requirements and is informed that they can then move forward to the planning commission for approval. And
I think on this one, just the cart got before the horse a little bit with the application. It's not that this is not doable. There's a couple of things on this app. It was for a Class C, which is on and off sale, but I believe that the intent was for it to be a Class I, so that would be on sale, or I'm sorry, off sale only. That was something that need to get cleaned up. If this gets denied here, it would go back to the Liquor Commission. A show cause hearing would be scheduled. It probably wouldn't be till January, first or second week time frame, which should potentially be more than enough time for them to work through this. The city at any time, and Brian and I communicate regularly and would continue to communicate on this. And if the city were to remove its objection at any time prior to that hearing, we could do that.
Okay, John?
Yes, Investigator Schaefer, thinking how to handle this, when might we be able to act on this? And the reason I ask that is, would we want to consider putting this on a pending rather than just total denial?
I think
that was my colleague's decision.
I think we only have a certain number of days to respond in order for us to weigh in. If we wait, the Liquor Commission moves on without us. And without,
so they would have the for-cause hearing regardless? Or
if we don't submit a recommendation either way, it goes in as an automatic approval.
Okay, so your recommendation
the answer
would be for
to your question would be that today would be the appropriate day to weigh in, to vote on it.
And again, you'll be in touch with the applicants so they can fully appreciate the nature
Yes.
of it. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, would you care to comment at this point?
Yep, so I think that I still follow with Brian and Mr. Schaefer to complete the application and all information they need, and then I think we will come back.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move, first of all, we hold over item 13.
Second on that?
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Carl. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Mr. Chair, I would move denial of items 14 and 15.
Second.
Denial moved by John, seconded by Cindy. Discussion?
I need a little bit more clarification here. I'm sorry, just a little confused. If we vote to deny today, that's just our recommendation to the Liquor Commission. They still will make a decision either way.
And he can come back and make reapplication when he has the plans taken care of. Is that correct?
With the denial, it will force a show cause hearing,
Yeah.
which would be around January, which would give him time to work with public work, with planning to get the special permit in place. If you would vote to approve it today, then it would not have a show cause hearing.
And then the only other thing that I don't know about is if they do come into compliance, they get the special permit issued, the city's, in essence, objection is removed, then I don't know if it needs to come back before council. It might be a question for law. Or if it needs to go back.
Yeah, in the past, I think if they've gotten the special permit before the show cause hearing, then the commission approves it without it having to come before us again.
Okay. Other questions? All right, so a yes vote is to deny the application.
Correct.
Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. Item 16 is approving a request to the City Performance Audit Committee pursuant to Chapter 4.66 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to recommend that, number one, the council direct that the fee structure inquiry by the Performance Audit Committee for fiscal year 16-17 be carried over for completion in fiscal year 17-18. And number two, the council review the reports provided and provide feedback to the Performance Audit Committee regarding any further information desired. And I would note we do have a motion to amend on this one.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. This is a follow-up to the council's direction to the Performance Audit Committee last year, which was to do fee comparisons between the City of Lincoln and other comparable cities. The Performance Audit Committee had a good start on those, but hasn't completed all the comparisons because they're still waiting in some instances for other cities to provide us with the data we need to make that comparison. So the Performance Audit Committee came forward with this resolution, essentially asking more time to complete that, and then that will come to the council, and then the council can, if it wants more information, direct the Performance Audit Committee to act upon that. The amendment to this resolution is just to clarify some language that was my drafting error that Councilwoman Lamb caught, and so we're cleaning that up. But it doesn't change, I think, the focus of the resolution.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is...
Do we need the motion to amend number one, or you want to wait?
That
for
would
voting?
wait for the voting
Okay.
session?
And if I may, too, on that, okay, I'll discuss it later. Thank you.
Okay. Next item.
All right, next is item 17, application of All In Acquisitions LLC for use of public right-of-way to construct a stairway in the alley at 325 South 11th Street.
Good afternoon, Council. My company is, go ahead.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, Luke Flowerday. I am a managing member of All In Acquisitions LLC. We purchased the building at 325 South 11th Street a little over a year ago. It was in really, really bad condition. There was a leak in the roof that went all the way to the basement. So we've been renovating the property and trying to restore it to the community. Our intent is to include 2 residential units in the building as well as 2 commercial units at the front of the building. There is currently a cast iron staircase originally constructed in Lincoln that was used as access primary means of egress to the second floor back unit. We are requesting a use of public space for the existing staircase. We're working with the planning and building and safety departments right now to determine whether or not the staircase either qualifies for historical exemptions or protections, or if it needs to be rebuilt, sort of what we need to do in order to make sure that the new staircase is up to current building and safety code and regulation. So the staircase will be it does not intrude into the alley any more than existing dumpsters and things like that. I believe the current width of the staircase is around 42 inches. If we end up having to build a new one, we won't be going, we wouldn't certainly go any wider than the width of a dumpster, therefore not impeding into the alley or encroaching into the alley at all.
All right. Questions for Luke? Cindy?
Do you have any photos at all?
I do. Yeah, I didn't bring them with me. I didn't know if that, I just found out about this morning.
He's got some.
Oh,
you
here
got
come
some?
photos.
All right.
How about that?
All right. Thank you very much. So, that's the staircase right there. Can you guys see that?
It'll come up.
Give us a second. Here it
There we
is.
go. Go ahead.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So that's the staircase right there. That is a really cool cast iron staircase. It was created in Lincoln, Nebraska. I forget the manufacturer on it, but it's got right on the treads of it. It's got the manufacturer really cool piece of Lincoln history. We're hoping we can save it. I've been speaking with Ed Zimmer in the Historic Preservation Department about possibly getting it some type of protection, but we'll see how that pans out. So right now you can see that there are dumpsters there, and you can see that the staircase is clearly no wider than, or actually narrower than the existing dumpsters right now. So we don't plan to take any more alleyway.
Yeah, there should be a button on the front that would enlarge it.
Oh, okay.
See it somewhere up there?
Zoom?
Yes, there we go. All right, that might help us.
Although I'm technically a millennial, I'm not great with technology, so a little better with my hands. Okay.
All right, that's better. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
And has that's been there?
1906. I mean, it's original with the building. They don't make cast iron staircases in Lincoln, Nebraska. Last time I checked. I mean, we're talking turn of the century, you know. So which is why we're trying to save it. My brother and I have a background in historic restoration. We did the windows on the Kennard House, and we've the Museum of Nebraska Art, Mona Museum in Kearney, Nebraska. So we definitely have a huge passion for old buildings, which is why we bought a condemned building in downtown Lincoln, because we were foolish enough to. No, it's going great, but it's been a struggle. So, but we're bringing it back to life. So we'd love to say the staircase. That's going to be more of a building safety question, I think, and also up to Ed Zimmer a little bit.
So is the permit that you're looking for to use the right-of-way, you said you're not going to go out or use any more of the right-of-way than the current stairway is?
Right.
That's just required in case you have to, or you're being told that you need it for this stairway too?
I was being told that I needed it for this. This staircase was not originally permitted. So when we bought the building, you know, we started digging into this thing, kind of researching the history of it and trying to find out more about the building, and we found out that the city had no record of this staircase. We wanted to use it as primary means of egress, or ingress in this case, and so we've been just kind of going down the chain of command, so to speak, to determine what we need to do just to get this thing on the radar, essentially, and approved. We've got the city named as co-insured on our insurance policy as per the building department building and safety's request. So we're just trying to dot the I's and cross the T's.
Okay. Thank you very much, Luke.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Luke and I have known each other since he was very young.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Positive or negative?
Yep. Okay. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 18, approving an agreement between the city on behalf of the Lincoln Fire and Rescue Department and the City of Omaha on behalf of their Omaha Fire Department to provide mutual aid and assistance of the Fire Investigation Unit's Accelerant Detection K-9 team to the requesting agency during a fire investigation.
Good evening, Michael Despain, Fire Chief. So this contract may not have necessarily come to council, but because of the length of time that they're looking to coordinate this effort. But we don't have a canine arson detection dog in Lincoln now, and I don't know that we have enough demand for service to ever justify it, at least at this point. But the way to do it is just partner with other agencies that have one. I've reached out to Omaha's fire chief. They're happy to partner with us, and they've done this twice, 2 or 3 times now for free. But that's not a good use of their resources. It's their taxpayer money. So really all this agreement does is allow us a legal way to reimburse them when we use that dog for reasonable and customary expenses. We don't anticipate this, hopefully, using this dog very much, but at the end of the day, of the times that we have used it, what we've seen is it speeds up the investigation because it pushes the investigators to the area that they're looking for faster, and that slows down, it speeds up the amount of time that we get them processed and off the scene. So in terms of savings, there's some savings to the city if we can speed up the investigation. So again, it's a resource we don't have. The only and it's not a high-priced cost. It's really just coming to council because it's more than a year or 2 long. We're looking at a 4-year agreement.
John?
I noticed on the fact sheet you're estimating less than $1,000 a year. What type of charges does the Omaha Fire Department?
They have a fee schedule like we do, and so they're basically charging for the dog and the handler, and they have that rate will kind of change over the years depending on when their council approves it. But we anticipate a typical call out would be about $200, $300 if we called them, and so this is kind of a 3 or 4 call outs in a year based on the fires we had, say, in the Belmont district, where we called that unit out a couple of times. That's what it would have cost last year. I think that was an anomaly, but kind of worst case scenario, that's what we anticipate.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Chief. Okay. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, we'll go on to our public hearing ordinance's second reading and related resolutions. Item 19 is amending the pay schedule for the employee group whose classifications are assigned to the pay range, which is prefixed by the letter A as in apple, by changing the title from Technical Support Specialist 1 to Enterprise Systems Administrator.
Good afternoon, Council. Doug McDaniel, Human Resources. This first classification is being a revised request of Information Services Department. The class of Technical Support Specialist will have a title change to Enterprise Systems Administrator. That better reflects the work that's being performed. The class itself will be revised fairly extensively due to a consolidation of duties, which will better, again, reflect the work that is being done in this area.
Okay. Questions? Thank you, sir. Oh,
No.
John?
I noticed that this class, the new class would start at more than the old class ends. So instead of topping out at $78,600 and some dollars a year, it would start at $79,000, go up to $105,000. Could you clarify a little bit more? Because and how many individuals this would affect or potentially?
Certainly. It'll affect 2 individuals, which will have their pay adjusted. It's by contract 3.25%, in which they would go up. The reason for the increase is, if you look at the class description, it was last revised in 1997. We are not able to do extensive market review, and again, with this consolidation of the different types of services in this class, it commands that different level in the information service arena.
Now, if I understand, Mr. McDaniel, you said it would just go up 3.2%, but this starts out even higher, and so those 2 individuals, I'm assuming, are not paid.
They're at the max of their other ranges.
Right.
So, right.
So they would start.
They would go at the minimum, yeah. Minimum or 3.25%, right.
So a little bit over 80,000 then.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Thank you. And would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 20, amending the pay schedule for the employee group whose classifications are assigned to the pay range, which is prefixed by the letter A, by creating the classification of Assistant Parking Manager.
Again, this class is being created at the request of the Urban Development Department. The classification of Assistant Parking Manager is created to reflect the work that's being performed. The expansion of public parking in our city has created some additional duties, and so again, those are being assumed by other personnel. This also allows for some succession planning if necessary. So it's just to reflect the work that's being done in that area right now.
Questions? Okay. Miriam?
Was funding for this already budgeted, Doug?
It's being absorbed. I think in urban development for this one, they've had retirements and things such as that. So again, this would be much like the last one because it'll be limited to about a 3.25% increase.
Does anything go away then? Does this position replace something else?
There's no added FTEs, so
Okay.
that would be correct. Another position that's occupied would not be refilled.
So what is the fiscal impact of this change?
$2,500.
Thank you.
Cindy?
So I'm sorry, maybe she asked this and I missed it. Because this doesn't, the fact she doesn't say the source of funds, is that what she asked about? What the source of funds is?
I think it'd just be absorbed. David, do you want to speak to the source of?
David? Pardon me. The finances for our 2 employees come from the parking funds themselves and not the general fund.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Would anyone else like to testify on this item?
All right, thank you.
Next item, please.
All right, next is item 21, amending Chapter 23.10 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to adopt the 2017 edition of the National Electrical Code as specifically amended and modifying the fee structure.
Hi, Chad Blaha, Building and Safety Director. This item is very similar to items that have brought to you before. This is just updating our Lincoln Electrical Code to adopt the 2017 National Electric Code as our base code. We are currently operating under the 2014 code. And just to give you some highlights of the changes, this is not a code where we're allowed to do a whole lot with. Statutorily, we are not certainly not able to lessen the code at all. So we don't have a ton of local amendments, but there are a couple of changes that have been made with this addition. We have eliminated a couple of fees to our registration categories. We no longer are accepting fees for journeyman and apprentice registrations. We're just requiring using the state licensure process to do that. We are no longer doing any administrative work in regard to those licenses. We are also lowering fees for certain sizes of service installations. The larger services, we are lowering fees for those. One of the primary changes that took place with this code cycle has to do with a wiring method. Historically, Lincoln has not allowed what's called metal clad cabling method. We required all wiring to be in hardened conduit and separate wires be pulled through conduits. There was a change, a request to investigate this item further, and the task force did that and agreed to lessen some of their requirements and allow this material and this product be used in certain circumstances. And it represents about a probably 20 to 30% savings for these type of installations on high-rise type commercial buildings with residential uses in them. Really, that's the bulk of the substantive changes to this code compared to the previous version. And there is a member of the task force here. They donate their time to help the department out with this and lend us their expertise and in these matters, and we greatly appreciate their time doing so. This went through task force and code study committee and passed both. Usually passes with unanimous. There was some closer votes with the code study committee in regard to the MC cable vote, but it did pass, and so we are asking that you consider approving this measure, and I can answer any questions.
Questions for Chad? Okay, thank you very much. Would anyone else like to test? Oh, Cindy?
Yes, I would just like to hear from the member of the task force, so if that would be okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Schroeder. I'm an electrical contractor in the Lincoln area. I've been in the trade since 1975, and I started my contracting business in 1987. Questions?
Mr. Schroeder, I just wondered, how long have you been on the task force?
About 25 years.
Okay, thank you very much for that length of time. So how do you find the process? It's all working well, evidently.
It is.
And you've made whatever changes to it that you believe are necessary in 25 years.
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much for serving on that.
You bet.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next are items 22 through 24. They are adopting the Lincoln Electric System rate schedules to become effective January 1st, 2018, adopting the Lincoln Electric System annual budget for 2018 to become effective January 1st, 2018, and authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $300 million LES revenue and refunding bonds.
I have copies if we can.
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the City Council. We're here for our annual presentation of the budget. It'll be brief. You're getting a package right now that's the slides that we'll be going through here in a second, but we thought we would kick it off a little bit with something you may have seen, which is our Big Ten power rankings, electric power rankings, and it's been kind of an entertaining way of showcasing something that we talk about a lot because it's one of the metrics that we use with respect to how we're doing, is we continually look at rate studies both in the region as well as on a national basis. Interestingly enough, when we talk about national rate rankings or we talk about regional ones, we don't get anywhere near as much attention as if we put it in the perspective of the Big Ten electric power rankings. So hope you'll enjoy that. I think it's something you can share. It actually ends up being an interesting icebreaker when you're in social situations now, and people seem to enjoy it. I don't think it has anything to do with other rankings in the community. So.
Question as you go into this, when we do those comparisons on the bill, does that just the electric charge, or does that include facilities, does that include taxes, the city dividend, so that you get an apples to apples comparison? What does it include?
It's an all-in cost. Are you talking about these comparatively?
This, and I suppose anything else in your...
Yes, we do them as all in, looking at all the fees associated with it. If you'll look, we really have pretty extensive footnotes that go with all of these, both the national rate study, which is online, which is a fairly extensive one that looks at 100 cities. The regional one, which will be at the end of the presentation you have now, actually goes through in footnotes the comparative way we do that. For example, in a city who may not have a public power utility but may have an investor-owned utility, we check to see if they're paying franchise fees as well. So we try to make that an equivalent basis so that the customer saying, if I have 1,000 kilowatt hours of consumption in my city, it's comparable to this.
And these are residential rates?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything similar on commercial rates?
Yes, and we have, both the regional as well as even as far as the Big Ten, no. But as far as the national rate study is actually much more extensive. It literally will have different consumption levels within the same rate class. So it's quite a bit more in-depth than this is, so.
Okay, good afternoon, Council. I'm Laura Kapuska. I'm Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Lincoln Electric. And today we have 3 items to talk to you about: our budget, our rates, and a financing ordinance. So we'll go ahead and kick it off, and please stop me at any time if you have any questions. So on the first slide, there we go, shows our 2018 budget, both operating and capital. And while we'll look at each of these pieces a little bit closer, just to start off, it's about $15 million lower than the 2017 budget. And I'll be explaining where it's deviating as we go forward. This budget does not require a rate increase, except for the streetlight class, which is 9.7%. And I'll talk a little bit about how we got to that. We are proposing to continue with our rate restructuring, which we've been talking about for a number of years. This year, it's just for our residential and our heating service customers. This budget does meet our financial targets or makes progress towards meeting those targets. It does include a long-term financing of about $115 million, which is not scheduled to occur until next summer at some point. And then it does, we still do have our rate stabilization fund. It's fully funded. There is no additional funding required by this budget. Moving on to slide 3 is a snapshot of what's in our capital budget. So we're up about $2.5 million from last year's budget. The projects in the table represent 70% of our capital budget. And those are the same 5 projects that were our key projects last year. Some of them, I'll just touch on a couple of them. Our first one, the Operations Center, we've been talking about that for a couple years now. We're expected to complete phase 1 by 2019, and then the second phase by 2021. First phase is when we'll move crews out there so they can begin servicing customers from that area. And then the second phase is the offices moving out there. The Laramie River Station is a plant that we have partial ownership for in Wyoming, and every year we have a responsibility for a certain portion of those capital projects. So that's marked that it's an ongoing, every year we have certain expenditures. Southeast Lincoln Reliability Project, that is 8 miles of overhead line running from 40th and Bennett to 91st and Highway 2, and it also includes its substation at 76th and Rokeby. We've been talking about this for a couple of years too, and it's also to help improve or maintain our reliability for our customers in Southeast Lincoln. The underground rebuilds project has been continuing to be an ongoing project. And then finally, our duct installation program. That's a 10-year program we've been working on. And what it does is it lays plastic tubing underground next to failure-prone cable so that when the cable fails, we have an easy way of replacing it more quickly. So we'll wrap up that project in 2022.
Ms. Kapuska, and when you say put the plastic or PVC underground, is that, but you don't feed anything through it until
Right, not until it's needed.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on, looking at our operating budget, I've got 4 different pieces here. In total, it's down $17.5 million. One of the biggest changes is in our power cost. So if you look at that year over year, it's down $26 million from 2017. There's a number of pieces that I've identified on there that are causing the change. One of the biggest ones is LES's exit from the NPPD Sheldon plant. So that is saving us about $12 million in 2018. And we've talked in the past about power costs represent about 50% of our budget. So when you see big changes in there, like you're seeing next year, that really is one of the big reasons we're not having to have a rate increase next year is we've got a lot of cost savings in our power cost. And then our operating and maintenance, our administrative and general, so that's up. So that's offsetting a little bit of the decrease that we had from power costs. And we've identified 4 different items there that are kind of the underlying reason for that increase. So the first one is line locating costs. We've got Allo in town doing a lot of work, and we are responsible for doing the locating for that work. And so we've got some increase from that locating work. We have some changes to the amount of labor that we're actually capitalizing versus expensing. So we're moving more to be expensed. That's about $2.5 million more in expense. And that movement is really aligning ourselves better with other utilities and what they're capitalizing, what they're expensing. We've got about $1.6 million for enterprise asset management project. And that is a multi-year project where we're looking at how LES purchases and maintains our assets so that we can align across the company. And you know, as we've developed over time and we have different locations, sometimes what happens is the locations have their own preferred way of doing maintenance and doing purchasing. So we're bringing it all together. And that is really important timing as we add the LOC. We need to have everybody on the same page on how we're purchasing assets. And then finally, we do have a slight increase to our SEP, so Sustainable Energy Program. We're increasing that to $3 million next year. You might remember 2017 started off at $2 million, and it had been $4 million prior to that. We reduced it, and we were taking some time to look at the underlying programs, and we weren't sure the amount of demand that was going to be there. So we started off with a $2 million budget, and then about halfway through the year, we were seeing some pretty significant customer demand. And so our board approved an additional $500,000. So it's at $2.5 million, and so next year we'll take it up to $3 million. So just a little bit more about the SEP. Over the last year or so, we've been doing a very detailed study on the programs that we offer to our customers, wanting to make sure that any programs that we offer are not incenting free riders, so people who would have done it anyway, and that the incentive that we're paying is equal to the benefit that LES and the rest of our customers are receiving. So we feel that with the programs we have in place now and with this funding, that this should be the right place to be for 2018. Not a lot of change in transmission or distribution expenses, or depreciation expenses.
May I have a question on the one thing? You mentioned the increased line locating costs and due to the Allo distribution of fiber. Do you know what that is quantity-wise, what you're spending there?
In addition to the $3 million?
Well, that was a separate line item here you had for line locating.
This is an additional $3 million on top of what we're currently spending. And right now, I believe we're at almost 2.5.
I think that sounds
this
right,
year. So and that was much more than we'd budgeted for
to locate our lines so that Allo could.
That's correct.
Is there any cost sharing on that, or is that just?
No, we've had those discussions, as have other incumbent providers, and we've not found a way to satisfy that. We do have an obligation to locate our facilities. We're looking at this actually more like an expediting process because, they're trying to get theirs in within a short period of time. So that's why we're trying to be careful. We wouldn't want to raise rates around this because this cost should come back down. So this is one of those classic examples of a cost that hopefully will be reduced merely because the volume of the locates that we need to do. We've had to reassign people for locates and have both additional contracting. There's a lot of things we've done to try to accommodate that in order to meet their schedules as well. So it's been somewhat of a challenge.
I know there's been other utility providers that have had concerns too because these costs have been a lot more than what were estimated originally.
Yeah, I think, when, when we've done the evaluation as far as our per locate costs are, it's just the volume is so high. But we do have an obligation to do it. And so, and I'm breaking up here. But, with that obligation, we really don't have any choice other than to meet the obligation. We did seek an approach with them that we thought was reasonable, might be to have it viewed as an expediting cost, kind of like if you, okay, we'll see if I can keep this up for a little while longer. But, instead of looking at it as a straight having somebody reimburse us, it was more one of just saying, look, how about an expediting charge because we're having to do it so fast? But really, that did not meet their business plan, so.
She's got it.
Thank you. We'll just go ahead and share that.
Yeah. Who knows what I'll get now?
It's a highly charged situation. Oh, no.
Yes, it is. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
Just one follow-up though, with all of this location, is that in some way helping update your locational knowledge that you document, or is it just you have to go out and
pretty much it's just we're just locating. It's not really giving us an additional part of our database. So we have all that general information, but before someone digs, you have to know exactly where it is. So
Carl has a question.
Okay, just a comment really. Thanks for working with this situation because it's public power.
It is.
So you're serving the public and city-owned utilities. So that seems to me to be the right thing to do.
We have a good working relationship with Allo, and we've also done some review with respect to the number of dig-ins we've had with cable and things like that. When you look at the amount of work going on, there's no really significant increased rate of that. So,
thanks.
Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so as we pulled together the budget, we always run it through our cost of service model. And basically what that's saying is that each rate class should pay the cost to serve that size, that type of a customer. And so as you can guess, a residential customer has a different price to serve than a large industrial customer. So the table that you see on slide 5 is the results of running the budget through the cost of service. And our goal when we do this is to be within plus or minus 5% of that cost to serve, so 95 to 105%. Another goal that we have is to not move customer rates around rapidly. We want to be more slow, more methodical about it so customers can predict what rates are going to, their rates are somewhat predictable. So as you can see in this table right here, with the 0% rate increase, everybody is pretty much within that plus or minus 5%. Heating service and general service demand are just slightly outside of that. If you look historically, you'd see where they in times have been slightly under it. So as we look through it, we opted to not make any change on that this year, recognizing that for 2019, if we didn't have a rate increase then, we would probably want to bring that down a little bit to get them closer within to that 105%. However, if you looked at street and highway lighting, without that 9.7% increase, they were only at 85% cost of service. You may or may not remember, last year they received a 15% rate increase for that class. And over the last year, we've been talking with Brandon and others over at the city, explaining the background behind the increasing maintenance costs, and had even earlier predicted that it would probably be another 15% rate increase. But when we got to this point, we decided that with a 9.7, we could at least get them to the bottom of the band.
One of the things that we've experienced with this is not unlike the when you saw the cable replacement and a lot of the things we're doing for aging infrastructure, this is kind of the aging infrastructure side and cost impacts on the streetlight system, so.
Very similar to what they're seeing with the traffic lights. Seems like they're seeing the same thing.
May I ask a question on that? You know, we're adding, and you're helping us with LES on adding more LED streetlights and so forth. Is that having somewhat of a offset to some of this other increase?
Well, good timing on your ask. We've been asked by Frank, I'm not sure how you pronounce the last name, for a 5-year projection, as if the city went to 100% streetlights, what would happen to that rate over the next 5 years? And I don't have that answer yet, but we are working closely with them to help them model that, to see what would happen on the maintenance costs as well as the energy costs, factoring in what we know about as underlying cost increases or changes.
You know, one of the keys to that is the old poles and things would still be there that are part of this infrastructure issue, so those costs don't change. The energy and maintenance of changing lamps out would, because LEDs last a lot longer, so there's some offsets in there that we're just going to have to try to quantify, so.
Okay, so moving on to the rate restructuring that we've been talking about for a couple years. We are proposing more of it this year. We will not complete it this year yet. But this is kind of a good depiction of why we're doing this and reflecting that we are making some progress on it. So on the top left-hand corner, that's what before we started any rate restructuring, this is what the picture looked like. So you can see 76% of our costs were fixed in nature, but on the revenue side, only 13% of our revenue came in a fixed way. So that's like our customer charge is a fixed charge each month. We had a little bit of a fixed facilities charge at that time, but it's really out of alignment. And what happens when you're out of alignment like that is that as customers use less energy, which is where you're collecting the bulk of those fixed costs, you run the risk of not collecting enough revenues to pay for your fixed costs. So as we've been slowly over time making this movement of some of these fixed facilities costs and moving them over into a fixed charge on the bill. So you can see after this proposed restructuring that we'll be collecting 26% of our revenues in a fixed format as compared to the 13 before. So the next slide will actually show a little bit more detail on what are we doing in this rate restructuring. We have 3 components on our non-demand bills. So this does not apply to anybody, any demand customers. This only applies to residential, heating service, and general service customers. This year, we're only proposing residential and heating service changes. So this rate restructuring, what we're doing is the customer charge, we're not making any change to that because it is appropriately collecting the fixed customer type charges. So it's fine where it is. The facilities charge is a fixed charge, monthly charge on these non-demand bills, and it should include those things that are in that bullet point list. If you flip over to table number 3, that's the energy charge. And the things that are variable should be collected through a variable charge like the energy charge. So those kinds of costs are fuel and operating maintenance costs for some of the plants. And those are being collected through the energy charge. But we're also collecting those other things, the distribution system, substation, transmission lines, generation plants. Those are all fixed costs that we're collecting through this variable energy charge. So what we've been working on the last couple of years is moving those distribution system and substation costs over into the facilities charge. So we do it slowly and gradually because as you're going to see on the next slide, there is there's bottom line impacts to customers and it impacts them slightly different. So we're making it very slowly and methodically. And when we move them over, the facilities charge will increase, but the energy charge decreases. So to LES, it's revenue neutral, but to some of our customers, it's not. So if we look at the next page, that shows an example of what we're doing proposing for the residential customers. The first box shows the facilities charge, and in the green is what we're proposing to change it to. You may remember last year that we implemented the 3 different levels within the residential class. So based on the amount of average annual energy usage a customer uses, they're placed in one of these 3 levels. That again is kind of that cost to service concept again, that it costs us less to serve a small residential customer than it does a larger residential customer. Then in table 2, you can see that the energy charges are proposed to come down. As the facility costs are pulled out of there, we lower their energy charge. And then in Table 3, it shows some of the sample bill impacts. The levels are listed over there to the left, what level that customer would be in. And you can see there are small changes, increases or decreases to different customers depending on what level you're in and what amount of energy you use. And that is the reason why we can't just move all the facilities charges at one time, because you would, these impacts would be even greater. On the next slide is our proposal for our heating service customers, very much the same, although there's only 629 customers in this class, so this is a very small class. You can see in the green what we're proposing to change the facilities charge to, and then on Table 2 how the energy charge is coming down for both primary and secondary customers. And then in Table 3, I've given some examples of what types of customers we have in the heating service category and how they might be impacted on their bill.
And so, under the primary category, is that the only customer?
Yeah, there's only one customer in this District Energy Corporation, and they would, overall, it would be a reduction to them.
No matter what I do, I get hit.
No, this is
This
a
is a
negative.
reduction.
This is a good thing.
It goes down.
This is going down.
Oh, well, okay.
It's just so shocking. Yeah.
Well,
I'll be here all week.
Now, who else in the three-phase program? You know, my annual question.
Right. And so we are not making any changes to general service this year. And one of the reasons why, because that is also a non-demand class, and one of the reasons we're not doing that this year is because we want to take a little more time and study that class. We have a wide variety of size users in that class, and we're not sure if it should also be put into levels or if we should make separate classes. But over the next year, we're going to study that more, and so by next year, we'll have a proposal for the general service. Okay. All right, so moving on to the first of our resolutions is our budget resolution. Pretty much everything that we already talked about. It would adopt the operating capital budget. It does, as it does every year, provide us the ability to reimburse ourselves for capital expenditures. That's an IRS rule. If we don't have approval to do that ahead of time, we can't issue that type of bonds. It does provide us continued eminent domain. That is also in there each year. And it does, included in our budget, and really not called out anywhere else, so I stuck it on here, is that LES does contribute a certain dollar amount every year to the Energy Assistance Program. For 2018, that's about $313,000, and that's a program that we work with the Community Action Program with, and they issue vouchers to customers who are in need of help with their electric bill. So that's the first resolution. The next one is the rate resolution, and as we talked about, it does not require overall system-wide rate increase, but there is an increase to just the streetlight class of 9.7%. And then it also has the rate schedules, which was attached in the original package that came over to you all. That is the schedules that our customers can read that help them understand what the rules are of each of the rate classes. And so we've included in there the changes for the rate restructuring. We're continually trying to clarify content so it's easier to read for our customers. So we did some of that. And then there were some service fee changes that were included within those rate schedules that we sent over.
Could I ask a question? Out of curiosity, you get certain customers, unfortunately, depart with a bill or something. How much system-wide does LES lose in billed revenues due to?
Due to delinquent payments, you mean? My recollection is it's running about 0.3%.
Yeah, I was going to say a tad higher than that, really, but it's very small.
Congratulations.
Good people in Lincoln. Okay, so before I get to the third, the bond ordinance, Kevin already talked about the Big Ten comparison, but attached to your package so you can actually read it is our regional rate comparison, which is what's shown there on this slide. And that shows before and after. So each of the boxes on here represents a different customer class and a different usage level. And the shading represents where LES falls within that customer class. So you can see for all down the left side, we're the lowest lowest bill in that class, that size customer. The right-hand column in each of those boxes is after our proposed rate change. and as well as any other, so if any other utilities are proposing changes, we try to update those also, and that's the all-in that Kevin was mentioning, where we put the dividend, any franchise fees. If you read the back of that, I think there's all kinds of fine print about everything that's included in that comparison.
But in this particular case, we really don't know really what most everybody else is doing for 2018. In some cases we do, but not often, so.
Right, we have people on lookout for that. We still do believe that after this rate adjustment that we will be the lowest residential within this 7-state region. We'll still have the lowest residential rate. Flipping over to the next slide, and our final item that we're proposing is for approval of the 2018 financing authorization. This is, as I mentioned, our budget includes $115 million financing to occur sometime next summer. And anytime we do a financing, that requires approval of our board, but also of City Council. And so we've submitted an ordinance, which is similar to the way we always do it in the past. So it's our 8th series ordinance now. And what it would allow is us to issue, prior to 2019, up to $300 million of bonds. We'll probably never hit that amount unless some sort of amazing refunding opportunity comes out, but it provides us that flexibility in that format to be able to do it. At the time we actually move towards issuing bonds, we will still be back working with our board, and we will still need additional approval from them.
What is your current level of debt, and how has that, risen or declined over the last 5 to 10 years?
We're at about just under $600 million, and it is actually something that we work on bringing down, because our debt equity ratio, as we look at that comparison, it's a little high. So we're working on trying to bring it down. And when we were able to do the refundings that we've been really successful at over the last 4 years, it helps us to bring it down. And the other thing that's helping us trying to reduce borrowing needs is we don't have a lot of big capital expenditures going on besides the operating center. So we're very conscious of watching what we issue for, and we try to pay for half of our capital with cash on hand, so that we're not out borrowing for every single dollar, to try to keep that level from increasing. I would say since I've been here, I think it's come down slightly, or
One of the things that we're in a pretty interesting position, because right now there's an excess of capacity, and we have more capacity. As you all know, we are marketing some of that off on a short-term basis. So there's no imminent need to build another power plant, which is where your really high expenses are, giving us the opportunity to work on some of the transmission issues, the LOC issues, and be able to work through trying to get that debt lowered kind of in the near term. So it's kind of an interesting place to be, so then we can free up the capability when we need to make another major addition. We'll have that debt capability to do that.
Do you have an idea or an estimation as you program out ahead, and I know in your industry you try to do that, if you're at $600 million of debt now and you keep working it, hopefully, as you are saying, down, but if you had to go to something larger down the road, would it increase this substantially, or do you think through just payoff of existing debt and so forth that you might stay at this $600 million level? Just any observations on that?
Because as I look ahead at the financings that are required, and we look at our 5-year forecast, and we look at our construction, as Kevin mentioned, we don't have anything significant out there. So if I had to use a crystal ball, I would say it's going to stay at about that level. I don't see any significant increases for it.
Even if down the road we had to add something on?
Well, if we had to add a plant,
right, that's much,
that would be significant.
But the transmission, kind of the development we're doing now, that's not huge. The LOC is going to be the largest impact increment for that. So,
what would a new power source run? And I know there are different types and so forth, but just
it depends. Obviously, and I'm not trying to be facetious, if you're building a nuclear power plant now, that's probably $7,000 or $8,000 kW. The type of resource we would probably add would be maybe $1,000 a kW, because given the kind of markets we're in, we'd be looking at something that's a fast start, not something you're going to run base load like a coal plant or a nuclear plant. So hypothetically, if you needed to add, let's say 50 megawatts, that'd be $50 million. So,
thank you.
It's not cheap.
No.
So the final item, well, yeah, just about the final item. Once our board approves the, approves a preliminary budget before they actually vote on it, we are out in the community meeting with all kinds of groups, customer groups, I was on LIBA, Drive Time Lincoln, we met with LIBA, so there's kind of an idea of who all here we're out speaking with, trying to get customers' input. We had a public meeting to see what concerns are out there. And we really got overwhelming, either no comment or appreciative of the fact that there was no rate increase. So that's important information that our board always wants to hear back before they vote on it. And we were able to share some very positive information back with them.
Okay. Questions? Carl.
Thanks for making our job a little easier today. Appreciate that. I do have a question, though, kind of a philosophical question. You've shifted some of the cost to fixed cost, which and I understand that. How about, did you or the board talk about incentives for people to conserve in their energy use because you've reduced the rates of what they're actually paying for consumption?
So in the residential, where we put the 3 tiers in there, so one of the things that we were looking at in there is how could we incent people to, well, we had a focus on low-income customers, and then a focus on how could we get people to conserve energy. Right. And part of those 3 tiers is that it can give you the incentive to use less energy to get to that lower tier to have a lower facilities charge. Okay. And so we've seen some of that happening.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
I have to plead ignorance here, old age. LEC on your outreach.
Lincoln Employers Coalition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We shouldn't put acronyms,
yeah, I
but we do.
Spelled that out, yeah.
Next time, bring the dictionary of acronyms in government.
We also might want to note, we'll probably be back next spring. We are looking at some basically business development types of rates as well. As you probably saw a lot of the press that came out of the Omaha Public Power District and the Facebook and some of the unique things they did there. So we're not above stealing ideas as well. So we're looking at some of those, and we'll be coming back with you all at that time. We're kind of working, it's fairly complex issues to make sure you design those so there's not an adverse impact. In fact, you want it to be a benefit to the community. So.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on these items? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 25, approving a lease agreement between the city and Truck Equipment Service Equipment Company for use in conjunction with their private business of the manufacture, sale, and servicing of trucks, trailers, and related equipment.
Good afternoon, Lynn Johnson with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. Let this come up, there we go.
There it is.
This is a renewal of a lease on a piece of property that I'll explain the location of here in just a second, that was originated in 1997. It was renewed in 2012. The site is located on the east side of I-180, just east of Oak Lake Park and just north of the lake that's on the opposite side or on the east side of I-180. This is a 5-year extension of that current agreement, and it has an option for renewal of 2 additional 5-year terms. Some changes in this from the original agreement. The site is the overall site is 6.42 acres, and what we did is we worked with the lessor and identified an area that we could install landscaping around the perimeter to provide screening along I-180. And so that reduces the overall size of the parcel by about 0.85 acres. So the lease area now is 5.57 acres. The provisions of the lease is that the lease amount is based on the original lease amount, and then it increases by CPI every 8 years. And so we adjusted the lease amount, reducing it by those 0.85 acres, and that's why the lease amount has been reduced slightly. The new lease rate for the upcoming 5 years is $10,843.29, and that's for the 5.57 acres. There's another provision in the agreement that is new, and that is that the rent proceeds are to be directed to the Lincoln Parks Foundation, and they're to be placed in an endowment fund to provide scholarships for economically disadvantaged youth to participate in recreation programs. And so with those changes, really, there are three of them. One is changing the name of the lessor. It is now Truck Equipment Service Company. It was previously EJC Corporation. Truck Equipment Service Company is an affiliate of EJC. The change to the lease area because of adding the landscape perimeter on primarily the east side, primarily on the west side, and then the direction of the rent proceeds or lease proceeds to the Parks Foundation for that endowment. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have this afternoon.
Questions? Cindy.
Thank you. Can you tell me where the funds are directed now?
Right now, they go into the general fund.
Okay, and so we're moving them to an endowment for scholarships, and can you tell me a little bit more about that?
It's for low-income youth. We have a fund that we've established, and we actually utilize typically some Lincoln Cares funds, and we use those for scholarships for low-income youth to participate in a variety of recreation programs. And that's in the past, it's been everything from swim lessons to some years we bought swimsuits for youth who did not have swimsuits to be able to swim. We've done sometimes sports teams. We've done scholarships for summer day camp. We've occasionally done scholarships for before and after school recreation programs.
Thank you.
Any other questions? John?
So essentially, the rental rate's going down, even what it was before, and then so we lose that in the general fund. How would you handle some of the things before? Was that out of your parks budget that this would now go to?
Yeah, well, we do get requests fairly frequently from families who may have some sort of unusual circumstance. And in the past, we've been able to use some funds that we've set aside from the Lincoln Cares Fund, which is the utility billing donation program that we have with LES. We have found on occasion that it'd be nice to have some additional funds to be able to help those families out. Typically, we have essentially just waived those fees. This gives us a funding source to be able to help those families out over time. So these funds will build up. They'll continue to be managed as an endowment fund, and the proceeds from those then would be available that we could use to scholarship families in unique situations.
And if you're working on an endowment at $10,800 a year for 5 years, I mean, you're really going to be giving out most of it, aren't you?
Well, the intent would be that we would hold on to the principal, and so this would build up over time. Over the 5-year period, there would be over $50,000 there. On an annual basis, that generated about $2,000 a year that we could use for scholarships. We plan on about 4% of the principal of the endowment being available for use. And if we didn't use those funds in 1 year, they would roll over to the next year, and we'd have those available for a future year.
So are you going to wait for 5 years before you distribute any?
I think it'll depend on what requests come in. As those funds are established, the funds would be available next year. It would only be about $400, but if we did have requests come in, those funds would be available to use.
So where Parks now may be waiving the fees, this would give a minor income source or revenue source?
It would. So those funds, they would come back into the general fund that way.
Would they go to Parks?
All the fees from our fee-based programs, they go into the general fund, and then obviously we're a general fund funded department. So.
And then you said you're going to do landscaping, and I know the site well as we drive there on I-180. What is the cost you anticipate, and what type of landscaping you're going to do?
Within the agreement, there is a landscape plan included. And the landscaping is primarily evergreen trees, and so eventually it will grow up and it'll be a fairly solid evergreen screen. And unfortunately, I don't have a cost for this, but I could get a cost for the landscaping. It was included in the cost for the overall airport entryway corridor project, and I can get a cost for this if you'd like. And it's not in place right now, as you probably know, but we are planning on getting it in place before the end of the year.
And so those funds are there, and so you've been planning on this anyway?
We have, and we've been we've been working very closely with Rick Cole at EJC, and he's aware of it and has been very cooperative. And part of the delay in getting this accomplished was getting a legal description drafted and making sure that we had a good layout for that landscape around the perimeter that wasn't going to unduly affect their use of the site.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is our public hearing ordinance third reading, item 26, annexation 17004, annexing approximately 283.79 acres of property generally located at South 91st and Rokeby Road.
Is anyone here to testify on this item?
David Carey with the Planning Department. This is just as a reminder that this is a date certain return to this topic. Other actions were taken regarding this project that involved Lincoln Electric System property for their new southeast headquarter or dual headquarter building along Rokeby Road. The annexation was delayed 4 months, date certain, for the purposes of the basically the private landowners that agreed to the annexation, allowing them some time, as well as some of those tax, understanding the tax implications of their property taxes going into the following year. So that is what this is. This item is. All the other items that were related to this were already acted on and approved back in July.
Okay. Questions? Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
If not, that concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session then. Public hearing resolutions. Item 16 is the request to the City Performance Audit Committee, introduced by Lamb.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Cindy, seconded by Jane. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would move motion amendment number 1.
Okay, would you please tell us about motion amendment number 1?
Second?
Sorry, moved by John, seconded by Jane.
Well, it's a grammatical one that I think my colleague, Ms. Lamb, came up with, but to strike the words further request the City Performance Audit Committee to, and so it would then just read that the City Council review the comparison reports.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment? Please call the roll on the amendment.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Now discussion on the main motion. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 17 is the application of all-in acquisitions for use of the public right-of-way to construct a stairway in the alley at 325 South 11th Street, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Leary and seconded by John. Discussion.
I'd just like to make a comment where you're dealing with historical situations and all. I think it's great to work with property owners here, and I'm glad it won't go farther than the dumpsters, because that's always been a challenge for various larger vehicles.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 18 is approving the agreement between the city and OFP to provide mutual aid and assistance of the Fire Investigation Unit's accelerant detection K-19 to the requesting agency during a fire investigation, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Leary and seconded by Jane. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Our public hearing ordinances second reading are items 19 through 25. Public hearing ordinance third reading, item 26 is annexation 17004, annexing approximately 283.79 acres of property generally located at South 91st and Rokeby Road, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Benny, seconded by Lyrian. Discussion. Cindy.
Thank you. So last week And a couple weeks ago, the mayor accused me of being anti-growth. And so I just want to go on the record for saying that I'm going to vote to grow Lincoln by 283.79 acres tonight.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next, ordinances, third reading. Item 27 is annexation 17014, annexing approximately 2.72 acres of property generally located at 5600 West Adams Street, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Cindy. Discussion? Cindy?
Once again, I'd like to go on the record saying that I am going to vote yes to grow Lincoln by 2.72 acres.
Being a running total?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
All right.
Well, maybe a couple others of us ought to note too, we are not anti-growth. So.
All right. Carl?
Yeah, this, no one came to testify in opposition to this. It's an area right off I-80. It's an area easy for development. Kids that live in the area are already going to Lincoln Public Schools. Yes.
Good deal. Okay. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 28, annexation 17015, annexing approximately 152 acres of property generally located between 1st and 14th Streets on both sides of Fletcher Avenue, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Cindy. Discussion? Cindy?
Just one more time. Thank you, colleagues. I want to let you know that I am pro-growth, but I am also pro-personal property rights, and I am going to vote to grow Lincoln by 152 acres.
Carl?
And I misspoke earlier because this is the one that I
This
was
is the one.
talking then, and so this is the area that has, we have the services there.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 29, annexation 17016, annexing approximately 203 acres of property generally located between 84th and 95th Streets south of Holdridge Street, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Lyrian. Let me just say that, again, Councilwoman excuse me.
Yep.
Councilwoman Raybold has removed herself because of a conflict of interest. So, discussion on this item. Carl?
Thank you. You know, we've heard from lots of residents, some of whom are here this evening, and appreciate your obvious interest and passion about your neighborhood and what's the future of the neighborhood. As we've heard, the city is growing and expanding in all different directions. We've just acted on several of those, and in West Lincoln and Northwest Lincoln and Southeast Lincoln and recently in Southwest Lincoln, so this is Northeast Lincoln's time. What we've heard is that there are needs for concerns about fire protection, there's school issues, and there was I think most of the testimony we've heard is support, recognition that the area will be annexed. It's mostly all surrounded by city limits already. The question, I think, is really timing and what's the proper timing for this to be done. There are school-related issues. Students who live in the area currently are students at Waverly schools, and so figuring out how they can continue in Waverly if that's their choice, or where they would go in LPS. All those are things that need to be figured out. The fire service issues in terms of how grass fire issues can be addressed, and also then to get within the city as soon as possible to get the fire hydrants located in the neighborhood is really important for safety, not to mention the greater safety that can be provided for health issues with Lincoln Fire and Rescue versus volunteer individuals who would respond. So for that reason, I am supportive of annexation, but I'm also supportive of a delay. If we could vote to annex the area this afternoon, and then that would be effective a year from now, I think that would be advantageous, and it would make that motion.
Okay, so when you say a year from now, we better have a date.
Today's date is the 6th of November, so the 6th of November.
Okay,
yes.
So it's been moved that the annexation, would this be amended to have an effective date of the 6th of November, 2018?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Carl, seconded by Lyrian. Discussion. Cindy?
Yes, so I have visited with the law department, I visited with the homeowners, and you know, we heard a lot of testimony about them not expecting annexation until 2020, and so I think they came a long way in hoping for at least a year, hoping to see ground broken on a new fire station and so forth. My intention is to ask that this be put on a date certain for a year, which would be actually the hearing on November 5th, 2018, to give an opportunity to answer some of the questions that we had last week, also about the costs that the city will be undertaking and so forth. And for me, it's also a matter of the fact that unlike many annexation proposals that come our way, this is city initiated. And I think that makes a big difference because these folks were, they felt really abbreviated time. So I'm not going to support annexation at this time with a delayed trigger, if you will, but I would ask that it be put on date certain.
Are you making a motion?
Do I need to make a motion to put it on date certain? So I want to put it on move to put it on date certain with a public hearing on November 5th, 2018.
There's a motion that it be put on date certain, 5 November 2018.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Well, I will second that for discussion, but so we've got
two motions now.
You want me to review what happens here?
Yeah, so we got.
All right, so everybody understands what happens here. Okay, we have 3 actions in front of us. The first one that has to be dealt with is, in kind of reverse order, is Cindy's motion to put this on delay or pending to the 5th of November 2018. Keep in mind, okay, if that passes, then I think the amendment by Carl goes away. Is that right? Because it becomes, we've moved it off of this agenda today. Any vote we take today, we have 6 members present, okay? And if it goes 3-3, whatever it is fails. Please keep that in mind. Now, if the main motion fails after the 2 amendments have been addressed, then it automatically goes on next week's agenda.
On the 20th.
We don't, which was,
so it'd go on the
it'd go on the
20th.
next meeting's agenda. Okay? So just so we all know what to expect as we cast our votes. Maureen?
I would just like to understand better, because it seems like we all agree. We've heard people's concerns. We want to accommodate the need to plan. I mean, one issue that didn't come up in the discussion thus far was the need, a lot of the residents wanted to remove trees and utilize burning as a technique to prepare their properties for annexation. We have heard that they support annexation ultimately, but they felt that it was happening very rapidly. So with what sounds like some agreement on a time frame, I'm hearing you say that the question that you want resolved is cost. And I guess my question to you then is your vote for or against annexation then dependent on a number of costs to the city, or can you help us understand the rationale? Because every time we annex, we have not had a discussion of whether or not it's of a cost or a profit to the city. We don't typically make those decisions based on that.
Thanks for the question. That was only one example of some questions we might want answered, but it was an example also of how we haven't had the time in addition to the citizens not having the time. My primary concern is the homeowners, that every single one signed something saying we don't want annexation right now. They weren't necessarily supportive of annexation, they're just accepting that there's going to be probably annexation at some point, and they have come a long way from 2020 to 2018, and I'm saying that my motion is so that we give them the time to see that we are taking the actions that help them feel safer, remembering that this is city initiated, and none of them requested this. Every one of them signed something against this, and I think that they deserve the time instead of the abbreviated 90 days or so that they've had. So I spoke with them, and they first came a long way from 2020 to 2018, and then wanting to maybe see it off the agenda altogether until 2018. And when I spoke with them today, there's a general agreement that 2018 with a date certain, pending with a date certain of November 5th, 2018 with a public hearing, would be agreeable to them and make them feel a lot better about the process that we're undertaking and less like a land grab.
Okay, John.
Well, I appreciate, Ms. Lamb, what you've done in visiting with people, and I've had a lot of communications myself with the residents there. I cannot support that. I think that we ought to, I feel we ought to vote it down now. Even a year from now, the north, we don't even have land for that particular fire station. And as a result, I think we need to get more of our ducks in order because, as you say, the city is requesting this annexation. I think to a person, they've recognized that probably around 2020 or sometime thereafter, there would have been annexation anyway. They're agreeable to that. But from their standpoint, not only just preparation for immediately here, but looking at the public services, we're not going to have that. I did hear them say many times in their testimony that they'd prefer to wait till the fire station is completed. So they've got that service there. And I thought it was also interesting as we started hearing from the fire department on the daisy chaining concept or relaying of hoses and so forth, and started to look at what that does to the other city services. To me, that's an important part because I want to look at the overall public safety of all of Lincoln. And I think that we're just stretching some of this. The residents in this area and some of the others have been quite satisfied with their current police and fire protection, obviously, because they haven't protested that. I don't think it's a cost question here. The city will lose no matter what your numbers are. You know, we've got to settle up with the Waverly School District, getting the fire service out there, getting the fire hydrants there. And again, remember, on the revenue that we get, the property taxes we collect, about 16% goes to the city. So the cost isn't part of it. To me, it's public safety and making a transition that is at a point where the city can meet obligations to the residents for annexation. And so I don't know that we can, I can't agree to a date certain next year, even for a hearing. I think that we need to see the course of action on the fire station and then also hear from the city public works and so forth on a logical, meaningful, planned addition of fire hydrants and so forth. And you know, this even brings up discussion. Maybe we need to talk about SIDs, sanitary improvement districts. It just might be something on the horizon that might work as we do some future annexations so we work better. So I think we have some homework to do on our end and with the help of the administration. So from my standpoint, I appreciate both yours and Mr. Eskridge's motions, but I just don't want to have anything before us at this time, so I will oppose that.
Okay, I have a question for both Cindy and Carl, perhaps. What is the substantive difference between voting today to annex with the date of 6 November 18 or voting to put on pending?
Yeah, the difference really is the decision to annex is being made today versus delaying that decision for a year.
In my mind, the difference is respect for the people whose property we're looking to grab.
I'll chime in.
That's not a nice word. But anyway.
Well, because they haven't had enough time. I mean, they haven't had enough time. Annexing today is taking an action within 90 days of when they realized something was going to happen. They've asked us not to do that. I'm respecting that, and I think that they will respect us for that.
Larry?
Well, I was very impressed, actually, with the testimony we heard from people where they were very clear that they've discussed annexation, that they've been discussing it for years, that they meet about it every month, that they have been aware for quite some time that this was coming. So I thought that was very reasonable of them to show that they were aware, and reasonable of them to say that they would accept annexation and that they appreciated it to be further out, and I think that's what we're trying to do. But one of the differences has to do with public safety. I mean, let's be clear that we have heard testimony both about concerns and about reassurances, and from our public safety personnel, they have asserted repeatedly in public meetings, not just here in chambers, but in the community, that the LFR response is likely to be more timely because they staff stations 24/7, and that while they carry less water on their engines, that they will put in mutual aid agreements to ensure that there is multiple infrastructure in place going to the property. And in order to build in some of the infrastructure that isn't there today, the fire hydrants specifically, they have to be annexed. I think the difference, to answer your question, Roy, is that if we are certain that annexation is happening, Public Works and LFR can begin to plan with certainty that they should be budgeting for that infrastructure and be prepared to put it in a timely manner for people a year from now when this goes into effect. We might even be able to get a jump on that. So in terms of preparing for public safety, it seems to me having some certainty about it is important. And then I guess have to raise the question about, you mentioned this issue of stretching resources and being concerned about safety in general and how it affects communities throughout the city. I agree with you on that point, John, because that's something we've talked about with emergency response times and needing to ensure we have adequate force and equipment. But we've just annexed over 536 acres tonight, but that issue didn't come up. I mean, those people are affected too, and I don't want to be unfair in how we implement annexation. That 536 acres we've just annexed tonight has the same impact that this kind of an annexation would have on the city, regardless of who initiates it. We are growing, and our resources will have to be spread over a greater geographical area. So I think we have to be really consistent in how we apply these policies if we're to be fair to all residents of our community.
Okay. Would anyone else like to comment? Benny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am thrilled we're having a conversation about delay. I did speak with some of the residents, and I am excited about that. I'm also a little concerned that we set a precedent that if the fire station's not there, we don't annex in the future. It's a kind of a chicken and egg thing for me. They want the public safety, and we have an obligation to provide it, but we can't really put it in a place before we annex. So it's one of those, when do we pay for the infrastructure improvement? Before we annex and then possibly don't? Or, so I'm concerned about setting a precedent about annexing, but Councilman Lamb's point and Councilman Estrick's points are both well placed, and this didn't get easier. I thought it was going to get easier with more conversation.
Okay.
If I could, can I address just one thing? So we're not talking about infrastructure.
Fire hydrants and
infrastructure wouldn't even be built, even if we annex today, but not effective till, we're just talking, the fire station's supposed to go in the city already. So. All
right, so I'm going to make a comment before I call the roll here. And my comment is this: compromises are difficult because rarely does everybody get everything they want. Because if they did, it wouldn't be a compromise. So I think 1 year is a good compromise, and I'm committed to that. Now we're just going to have to vote and see how this shakes out, whether that's the compromise of putting it on a delayed date certain, or annex now with the annexation date of 6 November 2018. So we're going to call the roll on Cindy's proposal to put it on pending date certain. Do you have a comment before we?
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney, as a point of parliamentary procedure, the motion to amend and the motion to place on the agenda date certain are equal. Neither one takes precedent over the other.
Right.
That being the case, I think you have to vote on the one that was made first, and then you vote on the one that was made second.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to call it in the other order. I think because if we delay it, then we've taken it off the table.
No, no, I don't
Can we
think
just
so.
get some clarification on that, Jeff?
Okay.
As parliamentarian, I've given you my interpretation of the rules. I think as chair, he has the ability to interpret the rules as he wants to, subject to being overruled by the body.
So if anybody wants to appeal my ruling, you can say, I appeal the ruling of the chair, and that needs a second, and then it goes to immediate vote without discussion.
I will appeal the ruling of the chair because it might impact how I would vote, quite honestly,
Okay.
and the outcome of this.
Does that require a second?
Yes.
Yes, it
Okay,
requires a
second.
second. Okay, please call the roll on appealing the ruling of the chair.
Schob,
Yes.
Camp,
No.
Christensen,
No.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Lamb.
No.
Motion fails. So we will call the amendment proposed by Cindy.
Okay. Schob,
No.
Camp,
And to clarify, that just
this
puts
is
it
to
on the
place it on
agenda,
pending for 1 year
Pending for 1 year.
with public
Date
hearing on November 5th.
But no annexation at that time.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge,
No.
Gaylor Baird,
No.
Lamb.
Yes.
Motion fails.
Okay, now on Carl's motion to annex with the date certain of November 6th, 2018.
Schob,
Yes.
Camp,
No.
Christensen,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Lamb.
No.
Motion carries 4-2. Item 30 is approving a real estate sales agreement between the city and Blue Ridge Unlimited LLC for the sale of city-owned property generally located at 7701 Gray Cliff, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Benny. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb? Yes. Motion carried 7-0. Our resolutions on first reading are items 31 through 33. Our ordinances on first reading are items 34 through 37. I did want to note, under our upcoming hearings, the application of Discount City for the addition that is to be, have hearing on Monday, November 20th. We have received a request to place this on pending, no date certain.
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Moved by John, seconded by Lyrian. Discussion.
Which item was that?
It's not an item number, it's under upcoming hearings on page 7. We had set the hearing date back on October 23rd for November 20th, and we have some issues with the addition. And so we are going to request to place it on pending, no date certain, until we can resolve the issues. There is no deadline on an addition application with the state.
Thank you.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Our pending list are items 38 through 41. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward, I'd move for adjournment, and also again to mention to people we will not meet next week in observation of Veterans Day.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.